My name is Miss Courtney. I am a youth librarian. I work at the Kentwood and Gaines branches of KDL. And today, me and my friend Katie, who you'll see in a minute, she works at Granville, we are here to share with you some junior nonfiction books. But first, let's talk about what we mean when we say nonfiction. So when we say nonfiction, it sounds kind of funny because you think it means not something, but it actually means it is. So nonfiction is what we use to talk about books that are based on facts and information, and they're mostly true stories. There is one tiny exception in our nonfiction section, which is the comics. I don't know about you, but I've yet to meet a talking cat who loves lasagna, but you never know. So Miss Katie and I are here to share some books. We are going to be talking about books that fall in categories of animals through our history. So in our nonfiction, we don't use what some of you might be familiar with, which is the Dewey Decimal System. We use what's called the BISAC system. So it means that our books are sorted into categories based on what they're about, and those categories are sorted alphabetically. So it helps us kind of find books. So if you're looking for a book about penguins, you might look under, or you would look under animals and then birds, and then you'd find the books about penguins. They might also be under marine life because some penguins live near the water, but they're mostly under birds. But without further ado, I'm going to talk to you about some new and exciting junior nonfiction books. The first book that we're going to talk about is Pirate Queens. Now, when you think of pirates, you probably think of Blackbeard and maybe even Captain Hook from Peter Pan, but I think you probably are thinking about a boy. Am I right? That's what I thought. But they're actually female pirates as well. So they're called Pirate Queens because they're ladies. And this talks about dauntless women who dared to rule the high seas. And it's by Lee Lewis. And you can find it in the biography section of the library because it talks about different women pirates. So there are just a couple that I want to share with you, and it goes into detail about how they became a pirate, where they were a pirate, like what sea or ocean they were in, what government figure they might have been enemies with. But one of the first ones that I want to talk to you about is, what is her name? Which is, oh goodness, I'm gonna have to edit this out. It doesn't say her name. But Grace O'Malley, that's what her name is. And she was actually in Ireland. So she was a pirate on the coast of Ireland. And one thing was that she actually married another pirate. A male pirate, and so that just like increased her ships and whatever. There's also a pirate who is in the Chinese, who is a Chinese pirate, and her name was Qing Shi, and she was one of the most feared pirates of all time, male or female pirates. So if you want to learn some cool facts about some awesome lady pirates, this is a great book to pick up. The next book I'm going to talk about is also in our biography section, and it's called I Am Not a Label, and it's 34 disabled artists, thinkers, athletes, and activists from past to present. It's written by Suri Burnell, and Lauren Baldo drew the pictures, so she drew the portraits. So this book is really great because it talks about all sorts of cool, famous people, some that you might know and some that you might not know, and all of the great accomplishments that they've made, and that they didn't let their disabilities get in the way of what they can do, because they can do anything. Anyone can do anything if you put your mind to it. So a few of them that I want to share with you is Eliza Suggs, and she was actually an author in the late 1800s. But she had a problem or a disability where her bones would break like china, like a dish. They would break really easily. Even walking could cause her to break a bone, but she didn't let that stop her, and she became an author, so a writer. It also talks about some Paralympic stars. So for those of you who don't know, there are Paralympics. Those are like the Olympics for people who have disabilities. And there's a bunch of cool things. So you can learn about people and that they are not just a label. So just because they may have a disability, it doesn't mean that they can't do amazing and great things. So if you'll notice on the cover, there's Stevie Wonder, there's Frida Kahlo, there's just lots of great people. There's stuff about Helen Keller in here. Lots of really great and important people are in this book. So it's a really good one to read about. The next one is about jobs. Have you ever wondered how you can get a job in space? Well, this is the book for you. So it's I Like Space. What jobs are there? And this is actually in our career section. So we have a section that's all about different jobs that you could take. So this is one where if you like outer space and you're interested in learning about that, and you think that one day when you're a big person like me, you want to be involved in space, this has all of the jobs that are involved with space. And some of these jobs I didn't even think about. So there's things like you would assume like an astronaut or an astronomer. So an astronaut is the ones who go out into space. But for some of us, that may sound a little scary. And being an astronomer is the people that like observe what the planets and stars and all that are doing in the sky from Earth usually. That might be another option. But there's a lot of other people that have to put in the work for us to learn all this stuff about space. So there's the people that build the rockets. There's the people at planetariums who share their space knowledge and the knowledge that we've gained over the years with other people like ourselves. Like if you go to the Public Museum in Grand Rapids, there's a space center and there's a planetarium, and that person has to know about the different stars and constellations and the history of our galaxy. But there's a couple that I thought were interesting. And one of them is an astrobiologist. So this person's whole job is to try and figure out if there could be life somewhere else in outer space. Isn't that cool? I think that would be a really fun job. And then the other one is a scientific researcher. So there's a research team, a group of scientists who study different things. And there's actually a group of them on Antarctica that are studying the different, what life is like in Antarctica, because it's very cold, it's very dry. So it's a little bit similar to Mars, actually. So they're wondering if life can happen on Antarctica, could life happen on Mars? There are a few things that we need on Mars in order for life to happen, but it could have happened, maybe. And they're trying to figure that out. So if you like space and you think that that's a job for you, you can check out this book and look at the different jobs that involve studying about space. The next book is one of my favorite books, and it's actually called The Strangest Thing in the Sea and Other Curious Creatures of the Deep. And it's by Rachel Poliquin and Byron Eggenschweiler. Look at that. Now, I don't know if you friends are like Miss Courtney, but I love learning about deep sea. And actually, some scientists think that deep sea is kind of similar to life on planets far, far away. So if there could be life down at the deepest levels of the ocean, could there be life on other planets? Maybe. But this book is amazing because it goes through different creatures that you'll find in the deepest depths of the ocean. And it shows you an illustration of what this creature kind of looks like. And then when you open the flap, it shows you what it actually looks like. So one of my favorites in this one was actually the Yeti crabs. And so the Yeti crabs all live together. And when they're all together, they look like a pile of bones. But they're not. They're crabs, and they're very cool. There are also goblin sharks. There's this really cool thing called the glowing village of tiny creatures. Well, it looks like a glowing village of tiny creatures, but it's actually called a giant spinospore. I probably said that wrong. Spinospore. Anyways, but it's all these little creatures that are connected, and it kind of looks like one big jellyfish to me. but it's super cool. And of course, you get to find out what the strangest thing in the sea is. And you can decide if you agree or disagree with what they say. But it's a super cool book for those of you who are interested in learning about deep seas. But speaking of learning about things, I actually have a podcast. So at Kent District Library, we have a podcast. It's called Stump the Librarian. And every episode, we answer 3 questions from listeners and friends like you. And we also share a fact of the day and a book recommendation. And if you listen to episode 3, which is Whale Buffet Wednesdays, I answer a question about what is the creature that lives deepest in the ocean. And I'm not going to share that with you here. And I'm also going to tell you that this book does not tell you which creature that is. So you'll have to listen to that podcast. And you can find out more information about our podcast by going to kdl.org/stump. And you can even submit your own question. So maybe you've read one of these books and you want to ask a question and learn more about the information. That's a great way to do it. I've got 2 more books left. That looked like 4, but I have 2 more books left. The first one is called Evolved, and this has some of my favorite illustrations. I love books, especially nonfiction books that have really good illustrations, really detailed. I love a good picture, but I love illustrations more for some reason. But this book is called Evolved, and it's by Lucas Riera and Angel Savoda. And it's a illustrated guide to evolution. So over time, animals have had to change, and certain things that they had, like with their body or things that they did, have had to change because the climate has changed, where they live has changed, things like that. So this talks about different adaptations that animals have evolved to have. It talks about things about like what types of feathers animals have, scales. I found out that moths actually have scales. And all sorts of things. It talks about teeth. So the giraffe actually has the same amount of teeth as a human does. And most sharks have between 5 and 15 rows of sharp teeth. Incredible. Utterly incredible. So this talks about all sorts of different animals and what they've done to evolve over time, how they've changed, what maybe they've gained, what they've lost, different things like that. And the last book that I'm going to share with you is my favorite of all of these books that I'm sharing, and you're going to probably figure out why. It's called Battle of the Butts. Did you laugh? I laughed. It's the science behind animal behinds, and it's by Jocelyn Risch and illustrated by David Crichton-Pester. So in this book, we talk about butts and what different animals use their butts for. And you get to decide, once you've read about all the different butts in this book, you get to decide who has the best booty, who has the top tush. You know, which one? There are some interesting facts. So there are turtles. And if you've seen Frozen 2, you know that some turtles breathe out of their butts. And that is a true fact. Not all turtles, but some turtles. And also that manatees, which this book calls as the pudgy pooter, they use their farts to swim. That's how they propel themselves through the water, is by tooting. I bet you want to check this book out, but you can. You just have to place it on hold. So it's in our animal section, Battle of the Butts. But those are all the books that I have to share with you. I shared quite a few. Miss Katie, what have you been reading?
Hi, everyone, and hi, Miss Courtney. That was so fun to hear about all of your books. I'm especially interested in the Pirate Queen book. That sounds really fun. So I have some other cool nonfiction books to share with you guys. The first one I'm going to tell you about is called Good Eating, The Short Life of Krill by Matt Lilly and illustrated by Dan Tavis. So krill are these little tiny guys that kind of look like shrimp, and they only grow to be about 2 inches big. And they are considered to be a keystone species of the Southern Ocean. So what does that mean? that means that the ocean in the south needs krill for all of the animals in the ocean to survive. That's pretty amazing for such a small little creature, right? They are actually the main food for blue whales. And you can kind of see on the cover, do you see that eyeball that the krill is in the middle of? That's the eyeball of a blue whale. So blue whales eat 1 million krill at one meal. I can't imagine eating 1 million of anything. Can you? So krill are really, really important, actually. And this is a book all about how they grow and change. One thing I learned that I thought was fascinating was that krill can live to be 10 years old. Now, obviously, that's if they don't get eaten by anything else. But I thought that was pretty cool. And it's just amazing to me that something so small can be so important to all of these other creatures and life in the ocean. So again, that is Good Eating, The Short Life of Krill by Matt Lilly and illustrated by Dan Tavis. My next book is for anyone that loves the theater. And if you love the theater, I bet you recognize in particular that guy in the middle of the book. Do you guys recognize him? That is Lin-Manuel Miranda, who played Alexander Hamilton in the Hamilton musical. So this book is called B is for Broadway, On Stage and Backstage from A to Z. It's by John Robert Allman and illustrated by Peter Emmerich. And the first thing I love about this book is I love Peter Emmerich's illustrations. He has this kind of cartoony style. It sort of reminds me, if you've ever been to an event where they have someone that draws caricatures, kind of those funny looking pictures of you and everyone else that's at the event. His pictures remind me a lot of caricatures. So in this book, you get to meet all kinds of very important people, Broadway actors, composers. Those are the people that write the music that's used in musicals. You get to meet people that build the sets, so all of the things that the actors perform around and in, like houses and plants and all kinds of cool stuff. You learn kind of cool theater lingo, and there are biographies at the end also. So this was just a really fun book. I love the theater, and so I loved seeing some familiar faces. I thought it was really fun to get to see different jobs in the theater. And the biographies at the end are cool too, because you get to learn a bit about the different actors and important Broadway people that you meet throughout the book. So that is B is for Broadway, On Stage and Backstage from A to Z by John Robert Allman and illustrated by Peter Emmerich. I would have loved this when I was a kid. I've been obsessed with theater forever. And if you like theater at all, you will love this book. My next book is an art history book. This is called Blue. And Blue is a history of the color as deep as the sea and as wide as the sky. And this is written by Nana Equa Hammond and illustrated by Daniel Minter. And this is so interesting. I don't really think about where colors come from. But if you think about it, the colors that we see in our clothing and in paint and all kinds of different things like that, it has to come from somewhere so that our clothes can be blue, for example, or purple or whatever color they are. And back long ago, they were still kind of figuring out how to make those colors happen. So this is just really interesting because you learn all about the history of blue, the powders and the dyes that were used to make clothing and paint and all kinds of things. It turns out that they used everything from rocks to snails. That part's a little gross, I'm not going to lie. They used indigo plants. And part of what I like about this book is they don't really shy away from talking about some of the ways that blue was created. So indigo, the plant, was grown on plantations by African slaves. And Nana Equa Hammond does talk about that and how the slaves were poorly treated, and we got to have the color blue because of what they did, but they were not treated well. And that's a little hard to read about, but important to know. You learn about in this book also the ways that blue is used to describe all kinds of different things and sort of where that came from. So you might have heard about music called the blues before. You might have heard about people feeling blue. Sometimes that word blue is used to talk about people who are feeling sad or kind of down in the dumps. Sometimes blue is used in different religions and faiths. And so this is just a really interesting book because it focuses so specifically on the color blue and different ways that we created blue, how blue clothing is created and dyed now. And it's kind of a cool little history about something that I never had thought about reading about before. So again, that book is called Blue. It's by Nana Equa Brew Hammond and illustrated by Daniel Minter. And the illustrations are gorgeous. You can tell from the cover alone. There just is a wash of that blue color all the way through with white details. And it's just a beautiful book. I have another art book for you. This is called Lost in the Museum by Will Mabbitt, and it's illustrated by Aaron Cushley. And this book is so cool. It is set up as a story about a 7-year-old girl named Stevie. And Stevie gets lost in the Met. The Met is an art museum in New York. And she gets separated from her mom and her little brother. And she goes on an incredible adventure all through the Met. And this is so cool because it's kind of like you get to go visit the Met. You walk through all different exhibits. And the other thing I like about this book is it is a seek and find book. So on each page you get a little bit of a story about Stevie, but then a lot of the rest of that page is things to look for in the museum. You learn all about different historical time periods. You get to see cool artifacts. She walks through all these different sections of the museum, including the Egyptian exhibit. And she sees all kinds of armor and really cool Greek and Roman art. And then you get to find hidden objects too. At the back, there's a whole section where you learn even more about the artwork and you see real pictures of the art that is at the Met. And I think if you like museums, if you like thinking about details in what you are seeing, this is a cool book. I think it could be a fun book for parents if you're getting your child ready to go to a museum for the first time, because you kind of get some great ideas of questions to ask while you're seeing an exhibit. Things to think about, like what is the smallest thing you see in this room? Or what is the brightest object in this room? Just questions that you could ask your child that might get them interested in an art museum or even a public museum of some kind. And I love the illustrations. I like the seek and find setup. And it's just a really fun book about visiting a museum and thinking about what you're seeing. So again, that is called Lost in the Museum. And it's by Will Mabbitt and illustrated by Aaron Cushley. My next book is a biography book, but it's also about art too. This is called Ablaze with Color, a story of painter Alma Thomas by Jeannie Walker Harvey and illustrated by Love is Wise. And this is about Alma Thomas. Alma Thomas is the first Black woman to have her artwork selected to display in the White House collection. So the Obamas selected one of her paintings and they displayed it in the White House. Alma Thomas was always really inspired by nature and space, which I thought was super cool. And she was an art teacher for a very long time. And when she retired, she finally got to focus on her own art and creating artwork. And so what's cool is her career as an artist really kind of took off when she was 70 years old and older. And you don't hear about a lot of people who kind of start a new career that late in life. And she just is an amazing person to read about. I had not heard about her before. All of her art is kind of what's called abstract. So you can kind of tell that it's flowers or maybe outer space, but it's not like an exact painting or picture of something from nature or space. She had some pretty major exhibits of her art. She got to show her art. And it's really cool that she has a painting in the White House too. So that is Ablaze with Color, a story of painter Alma Thomas by Jeannie Walker Harvey and illustrated by Love is Wise. And I have another artist biography for you, but it also involves football. So this is called Pigskins to Paintbrushes, the story of football playing artist Ernie Barnes. And this is written and illustrated by Don Tate. So when Ernie Barnes was a kid, he was bullied a ton. He loved art. He wasn't really interested in sports. But he finally kind of got pushed into football by his family and friends. He lived in a town where football was really important and people loved it. And so he finally gets pushed into football and he actually ends up loving it. He ended up going to North Carolina College and playing football, and then he played for the New York Titans, the San Diego Chargers, and the Denver Broncos. And what's cool is he played football all that time, but he always still loved art and creating art. And so when he finally retired from playing professional football, he wanted to combine his love of football and his love of art, and he figured out a way to do that. He became the artist for the New York Jets. So what does that mean? He went and sat on the sideline and he drew sketches and he turned those sketches into paintings. And there were shows where all of his artwork of the football players for the New York Jets were shown on the wall. And you get to see some of those paintings in here. You can look Ernie Barnes up online too and see a lot of his paintings of kind of regular things like football games and people kind of living normal life. He was a very talented artist. I don't think he is alive anymore. Now I'm questioning myself. Oh yeah. Okay. So he passed away April 27th, 2009. But this is such a fun story because I think it's important to know that you can love different things. So you can love sports and art and be like Ernie and find a way to combine both of those things that you love. And so I just thought it was a cool story about football and art and passions and how you turn what you love into a job, which is pretty fun. So that's Pigskins to Paintbrushes, written and illustrated by Don Tate. My next book is also about jobs. This is part of a series called In Our Neighborhood. This one is called Meet a Bus Driver, but there are lots of other books in this series like Meet a Coach, Meet a Dentist, Meet a Grocer, so many more. And this is a career book. So this is written by Jody Shepard. And you get to learn about different jobs with these two characters up at the top, Emma and Theo. And I love this because you learn about job training. You learn about what a bus driver, for this example, actually does. I did not know how much training a bus driver goes through. So you learn about the bus driver learning CPR and first aid. You learn about the bus driver learning what to do if different things happen while they're on the bus. It's just really cool to see how a bus driver's day works and what they actually do. So this series is really a great addition to our library, and I hope you all check it out. Just because it's fun to see what different people's jobs are like. I still love learning that, and I know I was interested in that as a kid too. So this is a great series. Again, the series is called In Our Neighborhood, and this one is Meet a Bus Driver by Jody Shepard. And I have two more quick books to share with you. This one is one I'm actually still reading, but I wanted to share it with you. So this is called No Boundaries. 25 women explorers and scientists share adventures, inspiration, and advice. And this is by Gabby Salazar and Claire Fiesler. And this is about all kinds of real women who are doing incredible work in the science fields. They're explorers, they're having all kinds of adventures, and they get to do that for their job. You learn about women who are saving the lions. You learn about a woman who is a volcanologist. So that means she goes into volcanoes and studies them. You learn about a woman who is a paleontologist. So that means she goes on digs to look for dinosaur bones and remains. It's just so cool. So you get to learn about all these women doing very cool things, and it's all told in interviews with them. So you're getting kind of their real life story about what they're doing right now, how they're helping the environment, or what they are discovering on their adventures. And it's just a very, very cool collection. I think that this will inspire you if you like exploring outside, or you think dinosaurs are cool, or volcanoes. And it's just a very inspiring and fun read. And each little section is really short. So you could pick this up and read a story or two and put it down and then pick it back up again. So again, that's called No Boundaries, 25 Women Explorers and Scientists Share Adventures, Inspiration, and Advice by Gabby Salazar and Claire Fiesler. And my very last book I'm going to share is kind of a math book, which is interesting. Math isn't really in the section that Courtney and I were doing for these book talks, but this book is actually in our curiosities section at the library. So curiosities is kind of where they put things in the library where maybe it's about a lot of different things. Maybe it's a weird but true book where it's kind of crazy facts about different things. So this one is called We Are One, How the World Adds Up. It's by Susan Hood and illustrated by Linda Yan. First of all, I love Linda Yan's illustrations in this book. I actually emailed her to ask her if she ever sells her artwork because I think her illustrations are beautiful. And this book is all about how numbers and things like pieces of a whole. So you know how when you eat a pie, there are different pieces cut out of it? This book looks at how pieces of a whole work in real life and how math works out in real life. So some parts of the book, there's one part about baseball and all of the ways that the number 9 is important in baseball. I never knew this before, but there are 9 players out on a field for a team. There are 9 innings in baseball. 9 is a really important number in baseball. There's a section about plays by William Shakespeare and how numbers are important to how his plays were written. There's a whole part about ballet positions. There's a whole part about sandwiches. So you can kind of see why this is in the curiosities section because you get all these different varied things. The illustrations are beautiful and bright and inclusive. All kinds of different kids are shown. And it's kind of fun to learn these sort of random facts about all kinds of different things like ballet and baseball and sandwiches and so much more. So again, that is We Are One, How the World Adds Up by Susan Hood and illustrated by Linda Yan. And that is it that I have for Book Talks. You will see in the notes part of our video that we have shared a list of the books we book talk today. So if you are interested in checking them out from the library, you can go to that link and easily check them out. Stay tuned in the coming weeks for more book talks from other librarians with KDL. And I hope you check some of these books out. It's really fun to get to explore all the new nonfiction. We're always getting new books in here at KDL, and I hope that you try some of them out. So happy reading. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you again soon. Bye.